I want you to picture this for a second, and I need you to really see it with me. You come home from a business trip, you walk into your own house, and the first thing you hear is your mother screaming. You run to her room, you kick the door open, and you see the woman you married, the woman you swore to protect, standing there with a boiling kettle in her hand, while your mother is on the floor, skin blistering steam still rising off her body. Now let me ask you something before we even start. If that was your mother, what would you have done? My name is Chaiki. People used to introduce me like a trophy, oil tycoon, billionaire, philanthropist, the man who made it. That's what they would say. But none of that saved me when I saw my mother burning alive on my own marble floor. None of that money meant anything in that moment. I'm going to tell you how we got there, what I did, and why I did something at the end that most people still tell me was either the most honorable thing I've ever done or the dumbest. You tell me which one it is. Before the houses with the columns and the chandeliers and the lavender in the garden, there was Makoko. If you don't know Makoko, imagine houses on stilts over water smoke from cooking fires, wooden bridges that don't feel safe under your feet, and the kind of humidity that makes the air sit on your skin. It's loud, it's rough, it's alive. That's where I was born. That's where my mother became a legend. Her name is Ebi, but everybody called her Mama Ebi. Not because she was soft, because she carried that entire place on her back. She sold charcoal palm oil bundles of firewood, anything she could push in a wobbly handcart across those broken bridges. She'd come home with her palms split and blistered, and still she'd smile at me and say, "Chaik, we may be born in the mud, but we don't have to die in it." That line raised me more than food did. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. We didn't have much in the way people count much. We had cassava porridge, sometimes yam, if God felt generous that week, and a radio with a loose antenna that got one station on a good day. But my mother had this way of making me feel like I wasn't meant to stay there forever. She'd turn my face toward her with both hands and say, "When you smile, even the smoke forgets to sting my eyes." You hear a woman talk to you like that, you start believing you might be somebody. I studied because she made me study. I'm talking sitting under a weak bulb because power got cut again, copying notes on the back of old cement bags. Because exercise books cost money. We didn't have reciting math out loud, because if you stop, your brain starts thinking about hunger. That's the grind nobody posts online. Long story short, I got a scholarship to study in England. The day that letter came, Makoko exploded. Drums, dancing, people yelling "Mama University" like she had just won the presidency. She cried while everybody danced, and she kept saying one thing to anyone who would listen: "My son's going to leave the mud, but he'll come back. He'll remember me." That part matters. Fast forward. I leave. I build. I learn the language of contracts and numbers and power. I become the guy in the room instead of the kid outside the room. I start my company, Zion Petroleum. Next thing you know, I'm shaking hands with politicians flying private wearing suits that cost more than the whole shack we grew up in. People start calling me sir. People start telling me I'm the future of Nigeria. Yeah, that happened. And while all that was happening, my mother fell off one of those same old bridges she'd crossed 1,000 times and shattered her lower spine. Paralyzed from the waist down. Wheelchair. Couldn't work anymore. Could barely get herself to the doorway to feel the sun. And I didn't know. I want you to sit with that. I was out there in boardrooms talking about drilling rights and regional expansion, and my mother, the woman who bled for me, starved for me, skipped meals for me, couldn't stand up, and I didn't even know. You ever had money and still felt like the worst son alive? That was me. I sent money back, of course. I told myself I was doing right. I paid people to check on her. I made sure she had food. I bought her a radio. I told myself, that's love. Let me tell you something. Ugly Sonny will let you sleep at night while you're still failing the person who raised you. You know what I mean. Money lets you lie to yourself. Then one day, I get a call from my people. Sir, we've located your mother. We're bringing her to the Ikoyi house. Just like that. Like she was being transported, not reunited. That should have bothered me more than it did. I should have gotten in the car myself and gone to her. But at that point, I had a meeting. And in my world, at that time, meetings beat everything, even blood. So here's where two worlds finally crash into each other. They pull up with my mother in a black Range Rover. The gate opens, they roll her out in this old wheelchair with warped wooden wheels, and she's staring up at my house like she's looking at a palace in a movie. White walls, blue-tiled roofs, marble columns, imported statues, lavender in the back garden that my wife said made the place feel civilized. Security so tight, even the geckos needed ID. My mother looked tiny in all that. Tiny and shining. Her hands were shaking, but she was smiling. "Chike," she whispered, "I told you we'd leave the mud one day." I hugged her, I kissed her forehead. I said the line every successful son thinks he's supposed to say, "Mama, you're going to live like a queen now." And up on the balcony, watching all of this, was Amaka. Let me talk about Amaka. Amaka is the kind of beautiful that gets rooms quiet. Clean, elegant, not a hair out of place, perfect nails, perfect accent, everything pressed, everything controlled. The first time we got serious, she told me, "I don't do average, I do legacy." I thought that sounded powerful. Later I realized legacy to her meant ownership. She came down the stairs in silk heels, clicking on marble like she owned sound itself, and she leaned in and said to my mother, "Welcome, Mama," in this polite British laced voice she only uses for image. It sounded sweet if you didn't know her. I knew her. I could already hear that distance. Then she said, "We've prepared a room for you downstairs. It's just easier that way." Easier. That word again. We put my mother in the downstairs guest room at the far end of the hall. Technically, it was beautiful. White tile chrome fixtures, an orchid in a glass pot, air conditioning. But it had no window to the garden, no sunlight, no sound of wind. It felt like a storage unit with nice lighting. My mother still smiled. She said, "This is too much, my son." And I told her, "You deserve everything." And I almost believed myself. That first night at dinner should have told me everything that was coming. We sat at this long dining table that could easily seat 12 people. Candles, crystal glasses, wine so dark, it looked like ink. I'm talking the kind of table rich people post just so the world knows they're rich. I was talking business, oil fields, Dubai investors, new partnerships, like any of that meant anything. My mother, hands shaking around a spoon, tried to jump in with a story about Makoko. She said, "Chike, do you remember Mr. Bio, the neighbor with one eye, who used to help us light the coal stove when it rained?" And she was smiling, and she was proud, and she was finally at the table. And Amaka didn't even look at her. She just cut across her like she wasn't there. "Babe, we still need to finalize the Dubai partnership tonight, don't forget." Just like that, my mother went quiet. Her eyes dropped to her plate. The only sound left was cutlery gently tapping porcelain. "So I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the comments. If that was your wife talking to your mother like that, would you have stepped in right there in front of everyone? Or would you have waited to talk privately so you don't cause a scene? If it were you, what would you have done?" I told myself I'd deal with it privately later. That was failure number 1. After that, it got cold fast. Like fast. My mother stopped being our guest and started being the problem. Meals weren't shared, they were dropped off at her door. The maid started saying stuff like, "Madam doesn't want your ointment smell in the main sitting room." Amaka started using words like refinement and standard and presentation, the kind of words people use when they want to insult you without sounding like they're insulting you. One afternoon, I walked past the room, and I heard Amaka inside with her. Amaka was saying, "This house is not Makoko. That charcoal smell, that balm, that noise. It doesn't belong here. My husband is not that dirty little boy anymore. He's a man of society." My mother, God bless her, didn't scream. She just said, calm, "If that's how you feel, I can sit outside near the mango tree. The breeze is free. It doesn't judge." When an old woman answers you like that, you should hear the warning in it. I heard it. I still didn't act. Meeting number 2. Failure number 2. Then Amaka made her move. See, she didn't just want respect. She wanted control. She brought legal papers to my mother's room. Share transfer agreements. All they needed was a signature, and 20% of Zion Petroleum would be in her name. 20% of my company. That's not a gift. That's leverage. She told my mother, "It's just to protect the family, mama woman to woman, so the company stays safe." My mother looked her dead in the eye and said, "My son's wealth is not for sale, not for deceit." From that moment, I swear to you, something in Amaka's face just hardened. Whatever polite smile she'd been faking, it dropped. After that, it wasn't just disrespect. It was hate. Now let me take you to the day everything broke. That morning I had a flight to Abuja. Investors. Government people. Big deal. I kissed Amaka on the cheek and I said, "Take care of Mama for me, all right?" She smiled, sweet, touched my face, said, "Of course, I'll take good care of her." That sentence will haunt me for the rest of my life. I got in the car. We started heading to the airport. And I can't explain this part to you in a way that makes logical sense, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Something in my chest got tight. My stomach flipped. This voice in me said, "Turn around. Now. Not later. Now." You ever felt that kind of alarm in your body? For no reason, I told my driver, "Go back. Now." We pulled back into the compound. House looked normal. Too normal. Too quiet. No music. No clinking glasses. No staff. Just this heavy silence. I walked fast down the hallway toward my mother's room, and before I even touched the door, I could smell it. Burned flesh. If you've never smelled that, I hope you never do. It's a smell that sits in your throat and doesn't leave. I opened the door. My mother was on the floor, half out of her chair, shaking. Skin on her shoulder and chest already blistering, already peeling. Steam still coming off her body. Her hands were clutching at herself, trying to hold in the pain. Her blanket was soaked. There was an electric kettle on its side on the marble, still hissing water, still rolling. And Amaka, my wife, was standing there with the plug in her hand, breathing hard, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe what she just did, and also like she meant to do it both at the same time. For a second, I couldn't move. I just heard this roar in my ears. Then everything hit me at once. "Amaka, what did you do? What did you do to my mother?" She started stuttering. "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't. She wouldn't sign. I just wanted to scare her. She kept disrespecting this house." And I'm not even really hearing her, because I'm already on my knees, already pulling off my jacket, trying to cover my mother's burns without touching them, trying to pick her up without hurting her more. And she's whispering through the pain, "Chike, don't hate her. I'll be fine." Pattern interrupt. Stop right here. Imagine that. The woman who fed you with her own hands is lying there with her skin boiling off her body, and she's begging you not to hate the person who did it. Could you do that? Could you forgive that person in that moment? Be real with me. I carried my mother out in the rain. The sky had opened up like Lagos itself was angry. By the time we got to the hospital, people already knew. Cameras, reporters, headlines. Billionaire family scandal. Mother burned in domestic attack. I didn't care. I only cared if she was going to live. They wrapped her in bandages, started treatment, hooked her up, gave her something for the pain. I'm sitting beside her bed, shaking, saying, "Mama, I called the police. She's going to pay for this. I swear she's going to pay." And my mother voice, barely there, looks at me and says, "No, my son, don't let anger turn into a blade. You cut with it, it will cut you back." I said, "She tried to kill you. How are you defending her?" And my mother said, "Because you once loved her, and because I don't want you to lose your soul." Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. 3 days later, I went back to the house with an inspector. We pulled the security footage from that hallway. We sat down and watched. I thought I was ready. I was not ready. On the screen, we saw Amaka walk in calm heels on marble. We saw her unplug the electric kettle and let it boil. We saw her standing there talking down to my mother like she was dirt. We saw her say, "Sign the paper, learn your place. This is my house now." Then we saw her pick up the kettle and without hesitation tilt it. So if anyone ever tells you it was an accident, I'm here to tell you it was not an accident. But that's not even the twist. When the boiling water came down, my mother didn't put her hands up to protect her face. She didn't try to block it. She reached out to grab something on the little table beside her. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. Then the inspector paused. The video zoomed in and I saw it. It was a framed photo of me. While she was being burned alive, she was trying to save a picture of me from getting splashed. That was the moment I broke. I dropped straight to the floor in my own living room and I sobbed, full body shaking, couldn't breathe. And I'm not ashamed of that. Because in that second, I understood exactly who she was and exactly how far I had drifted from the boy she raised. The police arrested Amaka. Of course they did. She was charged with intentionally causing grievous bodily harm to a disabled elder. The story blew up everywhere. People love a scandal when rich people fall. The court was packed. Cameras, journalists, strangers. Amaka walked in wearing gray prison clothes, and for the first time since I met her, she looked small. Not powerful, not untouchable, just scared. They showed the photos of my mother's burns on the screen. People in the courtroom turned away with hands over their mouths. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. I stood up and I said something I never thought I'd say in my life. I said, "I don't call myself a billionaire anymore. I'm just a failed son who let greed walk into his home before he did." And that wasn't a line. That was the truth. I had protected deals harder than I protected my own mother. You can judge me in the comments for that. I probably deserve it. Then I looked at Amaka and I said, "I loved you. I did. But power boiled your heart faster than water in that kettle. You wanted ownership, not love. The second you poured that water, you weren't my wife anymore. You were just another person who hurt my mother." She cried. She said, "I was scared you'd love her more than me. I was scared you'd leave me. And I'm going to say something that might make you mad. I believed her. I believed she was jealous. I did not and will never believe that justifies what she did." The judge sentenced her to 8 years. Then because my mother, wrapped in bandages, still healing, begged for mercy, literally begged, he reduced it to 5. So let me ask you directly. Do you think that's fair? 5 years for doing that to someone's mother. Would you have asked for mercy if it were you? What would you have done? Most people think that's the end of the story. Wife goes to prison, son cries, mother recovers, lesson learned. That's not the end. The end is this. I walked out of that courtroom and I realized I didn't want any of it anymore. The marble house, the long dinner table where my mother wasn't allowed to finish one story without being cut off the contracts, the money I thought made me a man. I was done. I sold my shares in my own company. Zion Petroleum gone. People said I was throwing my life away. Journalists called it a meltdown. Partners called me ungrateful, unstable, dramatic. I didn't care. I took the money and I built something else, something in my mother's name. The EB Foundation. A place for women like her. Women in chairs. Women who fed whole families and then got treated like trash when they couldn't walk anymore. Women burned by the same people they raised, and I went home. I don't mean emotionally. I mean I went back to Makoko and I rebuilt the bridge my mother used to push her charcoal cart across the same bridge that finally broke under her and took her legs. We named it Mama's Bridge. We put a plaque on it that says, "For the mothers who burned so we could shine." The day we opened it, the whole place looked like a festival. Kids in clean white uniforms walked over that bridge holding paper flowers. Women in cheap plastic chairs were laughing like they'd just been told the world finally noticed them. Drums everywhere, people singing. The air felt warm, not from heat, from gratitude. My mother sat there in her chair, wrapped in her purple shawl, looking out over the water, with that little smile she got when she was too tired to talk. She took my hand and said, "My son, I'm tired now, but I'm happy. I watched you come home to yourself. That's enough." She leaned her head back and closed her eyes like she was finally allowed to rest. Since that day, people in Makoko stopped calling me sir or boss or chairman. They started calling me the son of water. At first I laughed, then I understood. Fire destroys. Water cools, heals, cleanse. Water lets you start again. So here's where I leave you, and I really want you to answer this because it's not just my story. It's a question for anybody who has a mother. Anybody who was raised by a grandmother, an auntie. Anybody who sacrificed for you. Do you believe forgiveness is strength? Or do you think forgiveness is just letting bad people get away with evil? Do you think 5 years in prison was justice, or was that an insult to what she did? And be honest, would you have forgiven, or would you have burned the whole world down to make her pay? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Lagos, Nairobi, London, Houston, anywhere in the world. If you had someone who carried you through the mud and never asked for anything back, type, "Thank you, Mom," and say her name. Let the world see who really built you. Like this video, if you believe we need to start honoring the people who raised us while they're still here, not just posting them when it's too late. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories, because sometimes the only difference between a monster and a man is whether he remembers who loved him first.